Still need some drinks. Ay.
From Microbe TV, this is Q&A with A&V. I'm Vincent Racaniello, and joining me tonight from New York, Amy Rosenfeld. Hello,
Hey,
Amy.
Vincent, how are you?
Did you say you needed a drink?
Yeah, I need multiple drinks.
But you're not going to because you are a good person. Not a good person. That's not the right word. Hi,
What are you
everybody.
talking
Welcome back.
about? I'm not drinking because I'm in the lab, and it's
Right.
irresponsible
You're in the
to have
lab.
booze
You're
and
doing
food in the lab.
a live stream. Welcome, everybody. Before we continue, don't forget, go over to givenow.columbia.edu. We can get the nice big screen.
Those are my
Amy's
viruses.
support Amy's work on enteroviruses. You go to giving.columbia.edu. What is Give Now? Is that the same thing, Amy?
Yeah, I think so.
Give Now. Yeah, it goes to the same place. Yeah, they were smart and got both URLs.
Yeah, but look, those are my beautiful viruses that make everybody sick.
The kind that make you sick?
Yes.
Anyway, go over there, click Make a Gift, type Enterovirus, and you'll see her program come up, and support it. Would be really nice. Okay? Thanks for your
We
help.
got some really cool data to publish.
And if you can only give once, give to her instead of to the incubator.
Yes.
Let's take a look at the current situation, Amy.
Current situation about what?
There it is. You see the COVID dashboard? Looks like there are
You
a
should
lot
have
of...
the epidemiologist from Hopkins who made the dashboard. I've been telling you for years to have her on. She's kind of interesting.
What's her name?
Why do you ask difficult questions?
All right, I'll ask you offline. Okay, I would like to do that. That would be great. But notice the biggest dots are in Europe and looks like China, Australia, that's not India, Southeast Asia. Boy, there's hardly anything in Russia, Amy. What do you think about that? U.S. is pretty low also.
I don't believe that the Russians have a lot of internet service. I think they've been cut off from the world because of the war in the Ukraine. So I don't know why we're even contemplating talking about this. It's not realistic.
Okay, we can stop. We can stop and we can go to our lovely participants tonight, almost 300 participants. Thank you to the moderators who include Les, Frank, Vanity Nutrition, Steph, and Tom. Thank you all for coming again, and we appreciate your participation in this. I just looked at a comment and laughed. In this attempt to educate everyone about viruses. Look at this. They kept saying aisle 6 at the beginning of the pandemic, so I checked. Aisle 6 is where the oat milk is at Whole Foods. That's great. And you get it, Amy? Aisle 6?
Yeah, I got it.
I think that's a pisser. Anyway, so they started giving Tosi to antagonize aisle 6, and it didn't work because it's too specific. It turns out that good old cheap dexamethasone does the trick. Isn't that something?
Sure.
Is the BA2 variant going to hit the U.S. really bad in the next couple of weeks, Amy?
I don't think so. I think we have a lot more immunity than Europe and other places do because we had a lot of people, especially in certain areas of the country, that really felt that the pandemic was overblown. And so they went on with their lives while other people stayed home and were SARS-CoV-2 adverse. So I don't think so.
I agree with you. I don't know what hit the U.S. real bad means, okay?
Well, it's like, are we going to see like a repeat of like the Delta wave? And I don't think so.
Well, they're more immune people than before, but also we're testing a lot, so you just see normal
No, we're not
infections,
testing
right?
enough.
Not
We're
testing
not
enough?
testing enough.
Who do you want to
No,
test?
but we don't really need to test it more.
Oh, well, I agree. That's what we've been saying for some time now, right?
Right. I
Test
mean,
people who
I
are
wouldn't have
sick.
said that we were testing a lot, and I shouldn't have said that we were not testing enough. The truth of the matter is we shouldn't be testing unless you feel ill and you're
Yes,
in the hospital
agreed.
or
Agreed.
need the hospital because there's a so if you're not vaccinated, there's that percentage that's not vaccinated, a huge
Hmm.
percentage of that has been infected previously.
Hmm.
So they should get the mild disease anyway.
With hybrid immunity, shot and COVID,
I
would you
hate that.
still wear a mask or time to live life?
Time to live life.
Your immunity is good, and you're most likely to not experience severe disease or death.
Okay. I'm a little confused about the icon because it's an Egyptian from like the Pharaoh time, and his
Yes.
name is Gout with Fried Okra. Was
I don't
gout
know.
with fried okra common in the Egyptian times?
I think there's a disconnect. I
Well,
don't know.
maybe I just don't understand. But it's kind of
Maybe
cute.
I like the Egyptian. That's fine.
I think it's cute, but I just didn't understand if there was a connect
Here's
or what I was missing. Look,
here's
there's Animal Party. There's Jen.
love the new format on the screen, kind of Brady Bunch esque. You mean the video with the panels
Yeah.
of people? Yeah, I've been
Yeah.
experimenting. I got a new plug-in for Final Cut Pro, and it allows you to do that very easily. Otherwise, it takes a lot of tedious manipulation, and so I'm experimenting with different sizes, and I think it makes more sense to focus in on the person rather than have background. Get in on the person. So the TWIV dropping tonight, you'll see, is slightly different. But with me and Amy last Friday, I zoomed right in. So I'm glad you like it.
Oh, you showed all my wrinkles?
You don't have any wrinkles. You're like young. Amy, why don't Omicron specific boosters show better protection against disease?
They're too specific.
They're Omicron specific. But they should be good against Omicron, no?
They're okay. They're not great.
So
They don't
what
work
is the reason?
particularly well.
What is the data? Those are the data from the non-human primates, right?
Yeah.
They immunize with
But
Omicron.
there was a big meeting today where the FDA discussed their new plan about whether or not. So they have to, if they want to make a variant specific vaccine, they have to have it ready for trial by May. Otherwise, they can't do it.
Why do they have to make a variant specific vaccine?
I didn't go to the thing and I only skimmed the article, so I'm not sure what Peter Marks's hypothesis is.
Well, this failure of Omicron specific boosters, but it wasn't in people, right? It's in non-human primates.
Yes.
It didn't protect well. And why?
I don't think it's clear.
Yeah, I don't think it's clear at all. I mean, one obvious explanation would be that Omicron is so diverged that it doesn't protect against the others. But on the other hand, immunizing with ancestral SARS-CoV-2 does protect against Omicron. So it should be both ways, no?
No.
Not necessarily.
We had this discussion last week.
Okay.
So for 68, right? Sera from Furman and older people protects against the new isolates.
Mm-hmm.
But the isolates from but Sera from patients who are newly infected does not protect against infection from old isolates because it's not left that evolutionary space and does not go back. So I
Okay.
don't
That
see
makes sense. Yeah.
why you
Yeah.
would think the other way. I don't get why you would apply that logic to 68 and not the logic to SARS-CoV-2. See, this is what I don't like, and this is where we have disagreements. Is when the logic works for one virus like that. I don't know why you don't apply it to all viruses until proven wrong.
When you say you, are you meaning me or people in
No, just
general?
in general.
Okay.
Just in general. I don't understand.
All
That's what a
right.
fundamental principle is,
I
right?
agree. I understand.
So
Yeah.
I don't understand why. Yeah, I don't. I'm a little confused, but whatever.
So people
It's
have
just
been
me.
discussing your sweater color.
Well,
What
my
color is
sweater
that?
is not black. My sweater is olive green with argyle.
Okay, so Andrew said light green to gray. That's the closest. But Gwen said whatever color it will be cashmere. Is that cashmere?
Yes.
I did never saw cashmere with such a big neck.
It's a turtleneck that's too big for my head, so I have to roll it down twice.
Okay, sorry. I'm sorry to hear about that.
It's fine. It's warm,
Okay.
and
All
I
right.
like it.
Let's get to some here. We see. So everybody is chatting. Are we asking questions yet? No, we're ready now for asking questions. So let's go. Hello, everybody. Have we moved beyond bagels to croissants?
What's the controversy about croissants?
No, it's not. Oh, I just want to tell everyone that Amy came to the incubator on Sunday. We did some work, and she went to the new bagel store and bought a couple of bagels. And her verdict was, Amy,
They're pretty good. They're fine. They're not
okay,
bad. But they're like they were warm, so it's not clear when they harden up how dense they're going to be because they were still warm from the oven, which is when you I really like bagels.
they're
Then
great
you
when you get
don't
them warm.
need any
Yeah,
butter or anything.
yeah, they're great plain. Yeah, absolutely. What did you get? A sesame and everything?
I
Do you
think
remember?
so.
Okay.
I think so.
All right. Kang wants to know: are there categories to grade pandemics? I was hospitalized for flu in 58, 68, and 1976. Would like to know how they compared with 1918. No comparison. So there's an informal grading where we say how much death was associated with each one, and they vary. So the 2009 was rather mild, but the 68 was rather severe, and of course the 1918 was the most severe. None of the subsequent influenza pandemics, 57, 68, um, and 2009, none of them compare to the 1918 in terms of mortality. So there's no official grading of that. Now here's a question for Amy. Will we ever reach one case per 100,000 for 14 to 21 days in the U.S.? If so, any prediction as to when?
One case per 100,000 we will reach for sure. And to when?
Yeah.
Uh, Close to 2024.
So are you still thinking the end of 2024 is the end of the pandemic?
Middle, I don't know, maybe the summer of 2024.
So that's dependent on getting much of the world vaccinated, correct?
Yeah.
There's many countries that are still have very, very low vaccination percentages. So that's the limiting factor,
Well,
correct?
that's part, yeah. I mean, there's two components, right?
Mm-hmm.
So there's the places where there's no vaccination going, like, the third world, like in Central America and some places in the Far East. And then there's the places where there's a lot of vaccine going, but the people refuse, like in Hong Kong. The older population refuses the vaccine.
Yeah,
So
yeah, that's correct.
you went to Ling's last night. Are her parents vaccinated in China?
Oh, yes, we were talking about it because she said they don't mandate vaccination in China. But her parents wanted it, so they went to a facility where they didn't have to wait online. They sat down, the doctors came and talked to them, and they got their vaccines, yeah.
Good.
So it's good. But she said it's very interesting that China, of all places, doesn't mandate vaccination. And I find that remarkable, frankly. What's your impression of that?
Well, I don't know why you would need to mandate vaccination when you lock down your entire country when there's 4 cases of it in a city.
It's
So
true.
I would think that people would be smart enough to get online to get vaccinated, but what do I know?
Oh, well, they're not any different from the rest of the world, are they now?
I don't know.
At least with respect to getting vaccinated.
I don't
Is
know.
is China's zero COVID policy sustainable? No,
No,
of course not.
they learned that the hard way.
No, they need to vaccinate, and they need to vaccinate a lot of people because this thing is here to stay. You're not going to get zero COVID ever. I'm sorry. Not happening. And what was the perfect first line was, I need a drink. That was what you said, right? Or you said, I need multiple drinks.
I don't remember. You have
Hey,
to
folks,
review the
click
tape.
click the thumbs up. There are 420 of you, 144 thumbs up. Makes it easier for other people to find us. It's a good thing to do. And Barry reminds us, see if your employer will match donations to Amy's Columbia Research Fund. So thank you, Barry. I
Wow,
appreciate that.
that's great.
That would be
Thank
very
you.
nice.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we need more money. We have cool results and we need to publish. And so we need more money so that I can do more work, so I can write my paper and progress onward.
So what's going on with rabies in Capitol Hill?
Wasn't there a fox at the Capitol?
Oh, yes, aggressive Capitol Hill fox euthanized. Oh, poor guy. He's positive for rabies, though. That's not good. Yeah. Yeah, it was captured. It was behaving oddly. It's not a surprise because it's a wild animal, and they get rabies from being in the forest. And so, my thoughts are, it's not really an issue because the fox is now gone. It didn't bite anyone. So, and this is the way it works. By the way, when I drove home tonight, a fox was waiting on the side of the road to cross after I had passed. Isn't that smart? Foxes must be smart. I sent you a picture of a fox in my backyard, remember,
I
Amy?
do. I do.
If immunity does not prevent infections, how will 1 in 100,000 cases ever be reached again? Good question. What's the matter? You're talking about, when you say 1 in 100,000, you're talking about symptomatic cases or just PCR positive, Amy?
Symptomatic cases, but the assumption is so you really believe that people get infected at the same time?
What do you mean people get
Like
infected?
so by definition, the randomness of the rate. If the rate is low enough, will be even if you do PCR, you will get to a point where you are 1 in 100,000 by the randomness of the rate of infection.
Yeah, okay, that's fair. There will certainly be periods where we're there, but then there'll be probably winter periods where we're not at 1 in 100,000, just like we're not for flu, right?
Right.
Get vaccinated, you'll be safe. And that's the issue. If you get to 100,000 per 100,000, then people who are not vaccinated are going to get infected. Okie dokie. I love the Ellis spot, Chwev. I always love learning about vaccine immunology. Have you guys ever heard about the dirty mouse model for immune responses? Have you heard about that?
No, I don't know what they're talking about.
Has something to do with microbiome, I bet. I don't remember. Yes.
I don't know.
Could we all have long COVID before this is over? No.
Probably not.
No. I don't know why people are freaking out about long COVID, especially vaccinated people. You have a fan, Dr. Deborah Chance. Really loves
Oh,
you.
it's cute. It's cute.
Look at all the flowers. How nice.
Yeah, it's good.
All right. mRNA collateral damage. What happens to spike factory muscle cells? They never return to function. They die of exhaustion or T cells kill them. How many cells? Thousands. Do you want to take that, or would you like me to take it?
You can go.
I think the majority of the mRNA vaccine is taken up by antigen-presenting cells. And that's their job, to take it up. The protein gets made, they process the protein, and they present it to T cells. That's how you get the immune system going. A fraction of muscle cells may take it up. It would be some time before. T cells are not going to emerge for 7 to 10 days, right? Antigen-specific T cells. And so by then, those muscle cells aren't making protein anymore. So I think this idea that T cells are killing them is not correct. And so if you put spike on the muscle cell, it might fuse with a neighboring muscle cell. So yeah, that could cause a problem. But there have been no issues from the millions of people who have received the vaccine that would suggest muscle issues of any kind. So I'm not concerned. Are you concerned, Amy?
No.
How do latent viruses reactivate? External or internal stimulus, or do they reactivate at a fixed time?
Not to my knowledge do they reactivate by a fixed time, but generally it's a stress stimulus that then weakens some kind of immunity that was in charge of maintaining a protein that kept it latent.
Yeah, it's typically some kind of stress. For the herpes simplex viruses, it's an external stress that leads to activation of chromatin, basically, and turning on of the virus transcriptional program. So, yeah, it's external stress. But, of course, if you have let's say you get vaccinated and you have an inflammatory response, the inflammatory response could be the stress that does it. So, but it's still the vaccine or whatever is an external stress, as Amy said. And so the interesting aspect of this is for latent HIV, which apparently periodically just reactivates. I remember hearing John Coffin talk about this, Amy. He said the latently infected T cells just randomly reactivate, and if you have antiviral there, it's not a problem. But it's kind of a regular event, and there doesn't seem to be any stimulus for that, not that we know of. A man in the news took 90 shots of COVID vaccine. I heard about this. Yeah, there was a reason he did this. Someone remind us what the reason. Guy with 90 shots. Let's type that in. With 90 COVID. I read it. Someone sent it. Oh, he wanted to sell forged passes, to sell forged vaccination passes. So every time he got a shot, he got a pass, right? So what health effects might he have? What do you think, Amy? What could be a problem with that?
I don't know, maybe autoimmunity.
Yeah, so I think you'd keep driving your antibody diversification and affinity maturation, and then maybe at some point you get self-antibodies, yeah. So that's crazy what people will do. Albert says, I'm returning to the U.S. from Mexico. I have 2 shots of Sinovac AstraZeneca booster. Do I need a 4th shot? I think I have seen the study on these following up Sinovac with, was it AstraZeneca or an mRNA vaccine? In that case, you're set. I don't know about AstraZeneca after the Sinovac. Do you know, Amy?
I don't know.
But
my hunch would be fine.
I think you're fine with 3. I mean, I don't see the...
But I don't want to be then told that I'm giving medical advice. It's just, yeah. So.
What would Daniel say?
I don't know. You should ask him tomorrow.
I'll ask Daniel tomorrow. I think you're good, but let me ask Daniel. Okay. Have you had a chance to read the newest study in JAMA from Israel? Yeah. Well, I saw it as a preprint, and I'm sorry it got published because it's really garbage. It's just, that's the basis for the U.S. FDA saying certain people should get a second boost. And if you read anything by Paul Offit or Phil Krauss or Luciano Borio and many others, you will see that the study is flawed and you can't make any conclusions from it. And I can't believe, and the numbers were small also, but they didn't even tell you if these people differed in any way, if there was anything different about their health, only their age. So I think it's an irrelevant study, frankly. We talked about this a couple of weeks ago, actually.
Yeah, I'm not sure that the numbers were really that small.
Yeah, they
So,
were. Yeah, we're talking about 30
no,
versus 50 people, and that's small in my book.
no, we're talking about thousands.
No, 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 no. I showed those
Yeah,
on
we're
on the
no, we're
live stream
talking
last
about
week.
thousands. No, we're
We are not,
talking about
Amy.
thousands. Yes,
The
we are.
number.
I heard
No, no.
Peter
Wait,
Marks.
wait. The difference between uh, one boost and two is not thousands. It's 30 to 100. They looked at thousands of people, yes, but
Right.
the
They
difference
looked
in
at
the number of people who
thousands.
died is not thousands. That's
Right, but they looked
impossible.
at thousands of people. So I don't know that you
Yes,
would say that. So I don't know how you said it was small. It was a small
the
study. They looked at
difference is
hundreds of
small.
thousands of
The
people.
difference between deaths in the one boost and two boosts is very small. And my point is to base U.S. health policy on such a small number is absurd.
Well,
But
Peter
even more
Marks.
important, the population was wrong because, as Paul Offit said, these are people who volunteered for a second boost,
Right, but
people
if
who
you
want
want
to
to
have
know
it.
what the FDA was thinking, you should listen to Peter Marks because he explains it. Okay.
I don't agree with what he's thinking.
Well, it's irrelevant of whether or not you
Well, I
agree
know,
with
but
what
I'm
he's
allowed to
thinking,
express my
right?
opinion. And
Right,
that's what
but the
Markle
other
wants to
point,
know.
right, but the other perspective, which is what we should present, because we should not have a bias, is that Peter Marks does come out and explains his rationale. And the listener can then go and decide on their own.
Okay. But as you know, Paul Offit and Phil Krause
Yeah,
said there's no good evidence.
I'm aware of the two sides of the argument.
And
I
Phil
didn't.
Krause used to work at the FDA. So did Luciano Borio. Okay. He actually
Yes,
resigned over the first booster because he didn't think it was necessary. Okay.
yeah, I'm aware of it. I'm aware of how that altered I'm aware of how that altered the FDA structure. I'm not totally an imbecile here.
Edelhart says, you said the public has just decided the pandemic was over. What, did we say that?
Many people, including us, have said that the public has decided that the pandemic is over.
Oh, yes. Yeah, they have decided the pandemic. It's not over in the world, for sure. That's what a pandemic is, right? If repeat boosters, masks, and tests aren't necessary when vaxxed, what's left to do? Is it responsible to act like normal when vaxxed now? Yes. Yes, it is. That's what we're told to do. In New York City, you don't need to wear masks any longer. And because we've gone below the number of infections that the CDC says is okay to go back to normal. So, yeah, it's okay. It's responsible to act like normal when you're vaccinated. That's the whole point. The problem arises that there are many people who are not vaccinated. They can get very ill. They can go to hospitals. They can die. And that presents a picture of an ongoing pandemic. Right now, we don't see that in many parts of the U.S. I am acting normal except for public transportation. I'm not allowed to act normal yet. I have to wear a mask on the subway and the train. And as soon as they lift it, I'm taking my mask off. As soon as I get out of the subway, I take my mask off. Because I feel the science says the vaccines are what we need, and that's it.
Oh, apparently heart problems due in millions due to mRNA. You both are responsible for crimes against humanity. Lisa Motto. Apparently, I am responsible for crimes against humanity.
You know, it's likely that was well, it should be moderated
Wow.
because that's just an absurd thing to say. Well, you're looking at the raw feed, so it wasn't moderated.
Wow. I need to go home now and drink. Maybe I'll drink myself into a stupor if I'm responsible for crimes against humanity.
All
I
right.
should
You
also
know, that's
send in my PhD.
no, you don't have to do any of that. It's all fine. Okay. Could the majority use of AZ as the vaccine partially explain the UK surge versus
No.
mRNA? No, not at all. No, the problem with surge is it's cases. Okay, it's cases, and you're going to get cases with any vaccine. Dr. Walensky said this week in an interview that getting COVID after vax is like a booster, but she still said people should get booster 2 months after getting it. Well, I don't agree. The science doesn't say you need a booster after getting COVID. The science says that 2 shots in COVID is like a booster. But she's just playing the line. That's the CDC line. You want to say anything?
No.
Okay. I had COVID last month and I am triple vaccinated. I now have a new and continuous cough. Is it possible that I may have it again after such a short time?
You can have a cough for lots of reasons.
Yeah,
Not clear it's related.
it may not be related, Daniel. I think you need to just wait a bit and see how it resolves. We have large pockets of unvaccinated upstate New York. Yeah, I'm not surprised. And if the virus gets into them, they're going to have an outbreak. Sure. And many of them will get very sick. Some of them will die. But if you're vaccinated, that's not likely to happen to you. Not hearing more about long COVID after the high case numbers in January makes me think it's much less of a concern than I feared. Would you agree, or is this naive, too early to say? I think it's still too early to say. The reason being, as Amy said last week, it's a clinical diagnosis, right? You don't have a lab test that you can say you have long COVID, and part of the diagnosis involves asking patients questions. How, do you feel anything that's off? Can you taste? Can you smell? Do you have any issues that you didn't have before? How long are they continuing? So it's a little bit of an imprecise science. I think it's going to have to resolve itself at some point, but I'm not convinced that we have all the information yet. Eurico, Eurico, how are you? Nice to see you. Thank you for your support. Our paper on SARS-CoV-2 infecting lymphocytes is out. Okay, I'll take a look at it, Eurico. But what do you think? Do you think in every patient the virus infects lymphocytes? Did you look for infectious virus, or did you just do it by
Just
PCR?
read the paper.
Well, I can't read it right now while I'm on the live stream, can I, Amy?
Well, we don't need to have him answer the questions. Just read the paper when you can and
Excuse
have
me.
him
Eruki is
answer.
my friend, okay? I can talk to him.
This
Did you
isn't a
know?
conversation. This is a live stream where you answer questions. This isn't an intimate conversation. If you want to talk to him, call him up on the telephone.
Telephone? What's that?
You have a smartphone. It's the thingy that you use all day long.
Doug says, when you are dealing with a new virus, what methods do you use to try to confirm plaque assays actually reflect the real quantity of virus in specimens capable of infecting the host with reasonable accuracy? The plaque assay demonstrates infectious virus. You don't need to use any confirmation to say it's infectious virus. You won't get a plaque if you don't have infectious virus. Is that a reasonable answer, Amy?
Yeah.
Now, if you were doing PCR, you would have to somehow confirm that it actually reflects the amount of infectious virus, but very few people do that for SARS-CoV-2.
Very few people do that for actual virus, irrelevant of it being SARS-CoV-2. There are very few times when you can say 10 to the 10th lot copies of a virus equals 10 to the 4th PFU.
Hey, Amy, do you have any comments on today's FDA advisory meeting? They appear to be in the we don't know what to do mode.
I don't think that was the point of the meeting. I think the point of the meeting was to start to hash out a plan for the future.
Yeah, that's what you were saying.
I didn't go to the meeting, and haven't read that much about it after the meeting. But I do believe that the point of the meeting was to discuss how to come up with a plan for the unpredictable future.
Yeah, it's what you were mentioning earlier about variant-specific boosters, right?
Right. So if they wanted to make a variant-specific booster, which I don't necessarily know that that's what the FDA advocated, but they said, if we're going to need it, and you're interested in making it, you need to have the trial begin by May. I'm not sure we're going to need it, but it's always better to have the data than to be caught with your pants down. So I
Sure.
don't know that that says we don't know what to do. I think what it says is we have 5 scenarios in our mind, and we are going to have a plan for each of those scenarios, and we don't know which way it's going to go out of these one of 5 ways. And here's the plan for scenario A, and here's the plan for scenario B. And the plan for scenario C is, if we're going to have a variant specific vaccine, you need to have a clinical trial beginning by May, so that when we
Hmm.
need it in the fall, we have collected the data and have begun the analysis by the end of August. So I don't think that that's the same thing as we don't know what to do. I think it's pretty smart to have multiple plans and multiple scenarios in a time where you can't say which way it's going to go. I think it's fine.
Petri says, if the animal that the bat infected with COVID were found, could a vaccine be easily made like that of Edward Jenner, who created smallpox vaccine? Well, I don't think you would need to do that, because what's in humans is the one you want to make a vaccine against. That's what we did from the earliest isolates, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I don't think that this would help us in any way.
Well, isn't it unclear? Isn't that part of Rich's thing? It's unclear if the vaccine by Jenner was cowpox or horsepox.
Yeah, yeah.
So, if we found the animal that the bat with COVID infected, how is how is that virus different than the virus that we have? Whereas
Well, it's
horsepox and cowpox are completely different viruses, but they have uh, obviously some cross reactivity.
yeah. Okay. Caroline says you look gorgeous. We all have
Thanks.
wrinkles.
It's okay.
I'm still hesitating to go to crowded indoor concerts. Am I wrong? Triple vaxxed.
Think you should do whatever you're most comfortable with.
Right. So you have to assess the risk, which is you're well protected against severe disease and death, but not 100%, right? Because the vaccine may be at best 90% protective. So 10% is a lot. And when you go to a crowded concert, there could be infected people there. So if you don't want to take your chance, don't go. Do we know the percentage of Americans that have been vaccinated or infected, and removing the overlap between the two groups? I think, what's the number of people? So about 64% vaccinated and
Fully
43%.
vaccinated or one vaccine dose?
Fully is 64. And 43% have been infected. I don't know what the
No,
overlap is. Do you?
43% remain unvaccinated. You don't know how many of the vaccinated were infected and how many of the unvaccinated were infected.
No, you
That's
don't
a
know the
lot
overlap.
harder.
Yeah.
Right. That's a lot harder considering the fact that when you test positive at home, you don't have to or many people don't report their positive
Yeah.
test to the health department.
Correct. Was curious what you thought about the claim that microbiologists have better immune systems than other people because of more frequent exposure to microorganisms. I don't think that's correct, because I don't
Well,
think.
it's not correct because I'm a microbiologist and I was a microbiologist as a graduate student, and I did a lot of microbiology as a postdoc, and I was sick 180 days for 5 years when I was a postdoc. So
Should be said. We should
not
say in
good.
Montreal, a foreign country where the microbes are different, right?
Okay. What do you, so if their passport expires, they don't cross the border. Is that what you're telling me?
Or if their internet expires.
Oh, okay. Well, good to
So
know.
the way I look at it is that most most of them are working with E. coli. And I think there are other people out there that have far more exposure to microbes than scientists do. So I don't. I mean, and you're supposed to be careful when you work with these organisms, right, and not
Oh,
contaminate
really?
yourself
I'm
with
not
them.
supposed to be drinking and eating in the lab? No
No,
wonder why. Okay.
not supposed to be eating and drinking in a BSL-2 lab. I was wondering
In
if you
any lab, you're not supposed to be eating or drinking.
BSL-1 also, yeah. I'm
Yeah.
wondering if you find the questions your viewer asks are sometimes a stimulus for raising your own questions. A teacher, yes, of course, always. That's why I enjoy these a lot, because they're always different questions and they stimulate thinking. Like sometimes we don't know the answers, but it makes you think about how you might get them. I enjoy that very much. Do you enjoy that, Amy?
Sure.
What should I do after watching all the virology lectures? Oh, the Colopy is the high school student, right? Remember?
Yeah, her teacher's going to turn her into a ribosome.
So what should you do after watching? I think you need to listen to TWIV now, This Week in Virology, because now you have newfound knowledge about viruses. You can understand the podcasts. You don't have to listen to every one, although I don't know why you wouldn't. I listen to every one twice. But yeah, try some episodes of This Week in Virology.
I mean, I could understand why you wouldn't listen to everyone.
Okay, Eurico sends us the DOI for the
That's
thing.
great.
So I'll take a look at it and we'll talk about it maybe next
Maybe.
week.
Maybe.
It has to get Amy's approval, you
So
know.
maybe.
So let's type it in, see what we get. 10, 1, 1. Oh, I don't want to do that. Sorry. Amy will get mad at me. No.
No, you can do it. You can't have a conversation with him. It's rude to the other people. They want to have a conversation with you, and you can't have a conversation with him if you're not going to have a conversation with the 572 other people that are on this live stream.
I'm sure they would learn from it, but we won't. Okay. Peter wants a honey sriracha bacon croissant.
Okay.
He's pulling your leg because you said that was not a good idea.
I don't think it's a good idea on a bagel, but if you want it on a croissant, be my guest. Personally, I'm not sure that I think that honey sriracha bacon is a good idea, but with cream cheese. But hey, what do I know? I don't eat bacon,
What do you
so I
think
don't
about,
know.
folks? I'm wondering what folks think about all those weird cream cheese variants that I showed on the TWIV with Amy. Sriracha bacon was one of them, right?
Yeah,
And all the
but I also am not a big fan of chocolate with cream cheese. I mean, I get it if you're making regola, like the cream cheese is in the dough and it's baked and stuff, but I don't know.
Okay. Why do vaccinated people tend to react more dramatically to a second, third shot than to infection? I'm not sure that's true. Is it, Amy? Where
I'm
do you
not
get?
sure that that's true.
I don't know. I don't know any study that's looked at that.
Yeah, I don't know. Might be anecdotal.
And it also depends on the vaccine. Remember, the RNA vaccines have a lot of, they stimulate a lot of IL-1A, which stimulates pro-inflammatory cytokines. What is the most important thing science learned during this pandemic? And what is the most important thing science unlearned? Can I take the unlearned part?
Sure.
They unlearned how to be critical and remember your basic science and immunology, virology and immunology. It's just incredible. They unlearned it. And they had to relearn it during this pandemic, like antibody responses contract. Really? You didn't know that? What about the most important science learned, Amy? I know what Amy's going to say.
What am I going to say?
Nothing. I could be wrong. I could be wrong. But you don't like
Yeah,
it
I'm
when
not
I
really.
say what you're going to say. So why don't you say it?
No, because that's pretty much true. I don't think we've learned a fundamental principle.
What is a fundamental principle? In
Is
generally.
So something that doesn't change, that you build a foundation off of, right? So DNA is so the way it works is it goes from DNA to RNA to protein, right? You can go from RNA to protein, but you never go directly from DNA to protein, right? Fundamental principle, right?
Yeah, I would agree. There are no fundamental principles from this.
So
But
I'm
is there
not
any?
clear what the fundamental principle was. I think what it did was it showed how close-minded scientists have been, and how um, uh, we have not thought, and how we have not really learned very well good practices in how to do science. So, like the idea of, oh, coronaviruses don't go undergo antigenic drift, right? Well, where's the data that was from 40 years of studying whether or not they went under antigenic drift, right? We don't have any data that says that they never went under antigenic drift, right? But that's the assumption. You assumed it too, that that was an important finding. And whereas I said, well, show me a virus that doesn't undergo antigenic drift, right? I would never have assumed that it didn't undergo antigenic drift. Every other virus does. Now,
Well,
whether or
but
not we can
do you
detect
think?
it
Do you
is
think
a
that
completely
finding?
different question.
Do you think the finding of drift in the common cold coronas was important?
I think, sure.
Okay.
I don't know that it was the most important thing, but it was an important contribution. But as I said, I'm not really clear why people, including many people that I respect, started off with they don't undergo antigenic drift. It's like, I agree. The polio vaccine confers a great deal of immunity, and it's worked really well for 50 years. Does that really mean that enteros don't undergo antigenic drift? No, it just means that if enteros undergo antigenic drift, they don't undergo it sufficiently. It doesn't go to the breaking point where the vaccine induced antibody or immune response is no longer protected.
Mm-hmm.
So it occurs, but but clinically we don't really care about it because it doesn't really affect the outcome that we care about, which is whether or not you're protected from AFM. Now, if you want to understand how it undergoes antigenic drift and stuff mechanistically, and things, and why it goes to only a certain point, that's a basic science question. That's not a clinical question, right?
Okay. Fair enough. Eurico said, "Is Omicron the fifth endemic respiratory corona?"
Why is it different from SARS-CoV-2?
Yeah, SARS-CoV-2 is the fifth. Last I heard, Omicron is the SARS-CoV-2, right?
Yeah, that's what I thought, but I don't know.
Anyway, later on,
I got the kiss of death answer before, so I don't know. All right,
uh,
it's 9:18, so like two more, and then I have to go.
could a vaccine be made like Edward Jenner's? No, you don't want to, because he just took. Well, I guess Jenner's is an attenuated version, yeah. But a related virus to a human pathogenic virus. So let's see. So some animal coronavirus that replicates in people but doesn't cause disease and gives them immunity. You'd have to find it. So Jenner was pretty lucky that he saw these lesions and decided that that was similar to human smallpox. I don't think you'd want to do that. These days we have specific ways to engineer vaccines. What do you think, Amy?
Well, I thought the pig diarrhea corona that you talked on Twitter a few weeks ago or a month and a half ago was innocuous to people, but I don't know that you would want to do that because I'm not clear that there's enough similarity and cross reactivity. And I'm not clear. I mean, he didn't do it off of a nonchalant. He made an observation, right? that
Yes.
milkmaids who were touching cows that had pustules never got smallpox, right?
Right.
I'm not clear that there's enough information that says people who deal with pigs who have pig diarrhea coronavirus don't get respiratory coronavirus infections.
Yeah.
So I don't know
That
that.
would be the information we would need, right? Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know that we need to start having people get exposed to pig diarrhea virus. Sounds kind of yucky.
Amy, can you explain New York City's decision to have toddlers continue to mask?
There's no vaccine.
Is that it?
Pretty much. There's no vaccine. And they get infected and they get sick and some of them can get very ill and go to the hospital. Why would you want to subject your toddler to it?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that that's a good policy.
What does Amy mean when she says the pandemic will be over in 2024?
It means that the world will have enough protection where the majority of places will have will be under 1 to 100,000, not just the United States. Because when the world is not that and the United States is for 2 weeks, you see that that 2 weeks runs out, and by traveling and stuff, people bring it back and forth, and then you see cases go up. So it has to be the entire world. It's the same saying as was Daniel and his whole podcast with nobody's safe until we're all safe.
Nobody's safe until everybody's safe. But Amy,
Yeah.
if you don't consider COVID and just look at the rest of the world, it's never happening. There are many people who are never safe. You and I are safe, and they're never going to be safe because they live in an unstable country. They don't have food. They don't have this, that. So,
Right. Right. I mean, it's the world is unfair.
yes, quite. Nature is
So,
unfair, right? Nature is
yeah.
highly unfair.
Well, you have to kind of weed out some things. Otherwise, we'd be overpopulated.
Well, we have a quote in the beginning of our virology textbook. So, nature is not human-hearted.
Well, who thought it was?
Some people might have thought that nature, it's pretty, nice flowers, nice frogs, and all this, but it's not human-hearted. But I would say humans are not human-hearted either. They can be pretty nasty. One thing I find amazing is the RNA DNA coding looks like computer code. Well, I don't know if it looks like it because there are only 4 bases in DNA and RNA, right? Computer code has many more bases.
Really? I thought it was just a set of zeros and ones.
Well, zeros and ones if you want to look at the binary, but when you're writing a program in, words and numbers, they're more. I don't know. If Taryn,
I don't know. I thought that all computer code was basically binary
it gets
at the
down to
end of the
binary,
day.
but you write it. It's easier to write it in a language that gets translated to binary. But I guess he means the binary. Yeah, so it's 4, right? What would 4 be?
What do
0
you
and 1
mean?
is
What would be for?
so binary
So
is 0 or
isn't
1.
so wouldn't G be 0, A be 1, C be 0, 0, T be 1, 1, and then it's a bunch of zeros and ones of how
Could
you put
be.
it all together, right?
It could
Zero,
be.
zero,
Yeah.
0, 1, 1, 0, 0, 1, 1, 1, 1. I don't know. Not that. I don't know. I'm not that into it.
You want to take one more?
Sure.
Have you any thoughts on this inhibitor? Tempress inhibitor acts as a pan-prophylactic and therapeutic.
I saw that. I sent that paper to you.
Yeah,
It's interesting.
I think we'll do it on Twiv.
Yeah, you should. You should
So
talk to, what's his name? Klumpfner about it, too.
he's coming in a couple of weeks.
Yeah. I think it's an interesting idea. mean, you kind of need more than one antiviral, right? You're going to get resistance to one very rapidly. If you have
Oh yeah,
combination
you need
therapy,
more than
it'll be
one.
much better.
Absolutely, you need more than one. Anyway, Bobby, it's a good paper, interesting paper. We'll do it on Twiv. Maybe Friday. Amy's on
Maybe.
Friday, right? Amy's on Friday.
Yes, I'm on Friday.
So the answer to the question, who's on Friday, is Amy.
Me and Dixon and Rich Condit. Yeah.
Yeah.
No more April Fools. Yeah.
Are there any data on prolonged asymptomatic rapid test positivity after 14 days? How contagious would someone be?
I
I
think that
think,
there's correlative data that tells you that you're only shedding virus for like the first 2 days.
yeah, I think that 14 days, the correlation with shedding is very low. Yeah.
All right, I gotta go.
Good night, Amy. You gonna do
Good
plaque
night,
assay?
Liza. More
Okay.
important to
Have a good
Eliza.
Eliza.
Yeah. All right.
See you,
Gotta
see you
go.
later. Bye bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Okay. Let's see here. I wanted to go back to Caroline's. Thank you so much. I get to tell my mom there's no need to run. That the Israeli study could use improvement. You're so diplomatic, not like me, but I appreciate it. There was a time when I was very diplomatic. Maybe before the pandemic. I think one thing the pandemic has done is made me less diplomatic. I just can't handle the seeming idiocy of cardiologists. That's a good way to summarize it, right? Could a rapid test come up positive if you were infected and already symptomatic? Yes, absolutely, because then when you're in the first days of being symptomatic, you're shedding infectious virus, so it would be positive for sure. Yeah. Okay, after being infected, do the period of transmissibility to others end first, or will the antigen test turning negative first in the majority? The antigen will remain positive beyond the period of transmissibility to another person. Yeah, I mean, we originally thought it might not, but correlations with PCR and have suggested that you can be positive for a long time, well beyond the period. In a normal, uncomplicated COVID, you have shedding no more than 10 days or so, and some people can get positive antigen tests beyond that. Do you think Sinovac being an inactivated vaccine is why older people in Hong Kong are not accepting it? I don't know why that would be, because the older people are used to inactivated vaccines, right? Influenza vaccine, polio vaccine. So I don't think so. I don't know what the reason is. That's a sociological question. I can't answer it. But it's a problem, right? Because now they're dying. Viruses are like subroutine packages. Oh, I think that's putting viruses down less. That's disrespecting viruses. Are there any studies that show the normal winter rates of the 4 endemic coronas per million to compare with what a normalized SARS-CoV-2 rate might be? No, and you know why? There are just small studies. So first of all, there's no PCR, there's no diagnostic test for the common cold corona, so we don't have the kind of mass data that we have for many other viruses. You know that perhaps you've heard of BioFire panels. BioFire is a PCR platform where they have multiple syndromic panels. For example, they'll have a respiratory panel where you'll take a nasal wash, you put it in a cartridge, and you can test for many, many different viruses that would be associated with respiratory illness. And the common cold coronas are not part of that. So we don't have any of that mass data. By the way, you can access those data on the BioFire site. You can see, because it's all anonymized. They upload all the positivity data. It's very interesting to see what goes up and down. Anyway, we don't know the rate. All we have are serological assays, which Amy will tell you, and she's absolutely correct, suffer from cross reactivity. So they're not particularly indicative of which one is which. But the serological assays do say that some of those common colds can hit 80 to 90% of the population, and it goes in cycles. And there's antigenic drift, so you get reinfected. So I think that is going to be what SARS-CoV-2 is like. As Eurico just said, fifth common cold corona. Yeah, that's what Ralph Barrick said that in February 2020, at the very beginning. He said, I think it's going to become that. And I just thought that was brilliant. And I've hung on to that, yeah. So the fox with rabies bit 9 people. So they'll just get vaccinated and they'll be fine. That's the common procedure. You get post-exposure vaccination, and it works beautifully. Yeah, these things happen, right? Thoughts on severity of COVID with adult late onset asthma. There is a higher risk, but it's not the major risk, right? Obesity is the major risk. Enrico, Amy's face to my question is very funny. Yes, Amy is very, as you said later, she has, what did you call it? I can tell because you're the blue and I can scroll up. Amy, you're great. Keep the attitude. Yeah, she's got the attitude. And yes, she's makes faces to my, but notice how calm I am, man. And it's really different from the beginning of the live streams 2 years ago. I would react differently. Long COVID people keep saying because the vaccine doesn't stop infection and because people keep getting infected, long COVID will be a massive problem. Yes, I know that they're saying that, but the numbers are just not good. That's what I was saying to Amy earlier. I just don't think we have a good handle on diagnosing long COVID. It can't be a casual questionnaire type of thing. There has to be some kind of diagnostic, and I think that's being worked on. So I think the rate of COVID after asymptomatic infection of a vaccinated person is absolutely not clear. It is not just half the rate of in a vaccinated person. It just doesn't make any sense. It makes no sense physiologically. So I have trouble with that, and I don't think we have the data to sort it out. House mice react differently to various things versus cleaner lab mice. Yeah, that makes sense. I thought I had heard that. Yep, dirty mice. And I am not trying to minimize long COVID. I don't know why you have to misinterpret what I say. And I understand you have long COVID, you feel badly about it, but don't misinterpret what I say as being amplified by what you feel. All I'm saying is we don't have a handle on the actual frequency because it's such a fuzzy diagnostic. It's such a fuzzy clinical definition. Yes, Dr. Wilson with Debunk the Funk is doing a series debunking anti-vaxxers. That's good. I'm glad he's doing that. And I understand he's a huge TWIV fan. That's great. And I don't have the time to do that. It's not what I want to do. But I am glad that he's doing it. People should be very afraid of LC. I don't think people should be afraid of most things. I think you have to confront everything, and LC is one of the things we have to sort out. If you're going to be afraid of things, you're not going to have a life, right? So I understand being sick sucks. And so don't think I haven't had my share of illness in my family. Okay, I understand it. But I think there is a way to deal with it. And maybe not everybody has that way. And vaccinations clearly reduce the risk. How much, we don't know. That's all I'm saying. But it says it doesn't make any sense to be afraid and not have a life. I think that's worse than being afraid, not having your life. And, anecdotal stories, people who got long COVID after vaccination and infection, it's an anecdotal story. We need to know the real numbers. Will the generation of people who were the first to be vaccinated against chickenpox be susceptible to getting shingles? Oh, that they are. Some of them are getting shingles, in fact. So the question is, what's going to be the frequency as we move forward to subsequent generation vaccines? And I do need to get a varicella zoster person on to talk about this on TWIV. I think that's really an interesting issue. I went to my doctor and asked him if I got COVID, would he prescribe Paxlovid? That's the right thing to do. That's absolutely the perfect thing to do. He said he did not know about the antivirus medication. So this I hear all the time. I've heard stories. People send emails. I asked my doctor for Paxlovid. He said he doesn't use that. And as you say, he's never heard of it. How can you be a doctor today and not hear of these things? I don't understand. You should have your license revoked. I know they don't do that very often, but for God's sakes, keep up with the literature. And not even the literature. You don't even have to read, because you have to just listen to Daniel Griffin 30 minutes a week and he tells you what to do. By the way, Charlotte, I started putting in last week Daniel's clinical summary. It's not great detail because that's just what he says on the show. Stressed, there was a tweet today that all law students get shingles. Well, law students are not the most stressed students in the world. They're just focused on themselves, I think. But many things cause stress. My exams cause stress, and shingles or herpes reactivation in my students. How do slow viruses time the occurrence of disease? No, they don't time anything. So, let's take HIV/AIDS, okay? So you get exposed, you have an acute infection for 10 to 14 days. It gets resolved and you don't have any more signs or symptoms. Well, you have no more symptoms. Signs, you have virus in you. That's a sign. You have to measure it. And so then you have a long period where you can feel okay, and the virus is reproducing in T cells, slowly killing them. And after a number of years, and the precise time depends on many factors. There are people who do progress quickly. There are people who progress slower. You eventually lose so many T cells that you can no longer fight off other infections that are meaningless to most people, and you die of those. And so the timing has to do with destroying the immune system. That's just one example. What do I think about Sweden's response to the pandemic? Frankly, after the initial hearing that they were taking a laissez-faire attitude and letting older people get sick and so forth, I stopped. And we got lots of emails on TWIV about it, and I would read them, and then someone else would send an email saying, no, they're wrong, they're not saying the right thing. And so it made clear that I couldn't get proper information about it, so I stopped paying attention. So in the end, I don't know what they have done recently, and I have no more opinions on it. I'm sorry. I've had 3 Pfizer doses. Well, if you want a 4th, doesn't matter if it's Pfizer or Moderna. I think they are going to do the same for you. Thank you, Rob, for your contribution to the incubator. Rob is into fungi, as you can tell, and he's pushing to have a fungus person or a fungus twin this week in fungi, right? Someday we might. I just have to find the right people. You notice I just added someone to TWIM. It takes time to add people. Not every scientist is into podcasting. And I don't want someone who doesn't want to do it. We had people who didn't want to do it on Twin. And they're gone. Replaced with enthusiastic young people. Did you see the recent article in Vanity Fair? A hit piece on Fauci and Dashak. False information. Yeah, it's all garbage. There are a lot of people that love this stuff, so Vanity Fair is going to get a lot of circulation as a consequence. There's just nothing there. Nothing. Things started at the Huanan seafood market in Wuhan from contaminated animals. Peter Marks is the head of CBER, the division of FDA that does all the regulatory vaccines and antibodies and so forth. And he's the one who announced the second dose. So he's head of CBER, Center for Biologics Evaluation and Research. The FDA used a different Israeli study when you're talking about. There's 2 studies out of Israel, but the data from both are iffy. Okay. If they're both iffy, what difference does it make, right? I agree, they're both iffy. There's been a lot of iffy data out of Israel because they don't understand the limitations of observational studies. According to Bloomberg, Hong Kong doctors have been telling elderly people with chronic diseases not to get vaccinated until their conditions are under control. Well, if they have a chronic disease, they're not going to really ever be under control, are they? Probably not good research. Where can I find what Peter Marks is? All right, so just go to the FDA website and search for the most recent discussions about the second booster. You'll find it there. Seeing any link between patients fully vaccinated and getting infected, booster, then immediately develop symptoms of ulcer. Well, someone wrote to us today a similar story. I got vaccinated, then infected, and then all of a sudden I have a headache now for a long time. Not necessarily related to that. It's hard to know, right? I don't know why this would result in an ulcer, right? That's pretty far from where SARS-CoV-2 is working. Doesn't make a lot of sense, which is not to say that it couldn't be, but I've not heard of that kind of connection before. And the problem here is, of course, that when a virus is infecting so many people, then you get other things happening that appear to be a correlation, but they're not. They're just an association, correct? Yeah, Amy was reading stuff she shouldn't have. I want to know when they are going to lift the masks for nurses. As a hospice nurse dealing frequently with families' emotions, patients hard of hearing, it makes my job harder. I can imagine, because I don't like teaching with a mask, and since we've gotten rid of our masks a couple of weeks ago, I feel so much more connected with the students, right? So I feel for you. When? It's going to be a while because you're in healthcare and you're in contact with a lot of people, and so you are more at risk than anyone, and you don't want to transmit it either. Your health may not be at risk, but you may transmit it. So I don't know when. I assume you're in the U.S., right? And it depends on how long the numbers stay low. And, really depends on the next wave, which we will certainly, I think we'll have one when we do the summer travel, maybe. And then maybe another one in the fall, winter. Your video with Brienne disappeared off YouTube. I don't think so. It's still there. I just looked at it today. Maybe it disappeared off your YouTube. Let's see. The one with the T cells, huh? You're right. Who the hell took off my damned video? Well, I'll have to look into that later. Thank you for letting me know. Yeah. 885, 884, 321, 8079. Which one was that? I don't even know the number. Okay, I'll look into it. Thanks for letting me know. This is crap I don't need to deal with. Is it safe to ride the New York subway? Yeah, I ride it every day. But my experience is meaningless, right? It's an N equals 1. But it's safe because we have to wear masks. I'd ride even without a mask because I'm vaccinated, and I think the science tells me I have a 90% chance of not getting severe illness. 10% of getting it. I'm willing to work with those numbers. I decided on my acceptance of risk, and that's basically what you have to do at this point with yourself. Is bronchitis a way of saying we don't know what illness we have? So bronchitis is inflammation of the bronchi, right? And the inflammation can have any number of causes, right? Viral, bacteria. So yeah, we don't know. Just bronchitis alone just means an inflammation of the bronchial tree. People are worried about long COVID. I understand that it's a horrible disease. I understand that cancer is a horrible disease. I understand there are a lot of horrible diseases. But at some point you have to be realistic. You can wear a mask if you're worried about long COVID. I don't know what to tell you. This is where we are. We have these vaccines, we have these antivirals. It's not going to change at any point in the future. What should change is our estimation of how much long COVID there is with and without immunity. That's the key. Is David Tuller researching long COVID or working on a book? I'm not aware of it, but he doesn't tell me everything. When you ask a question, I'm always a little afraid they'll yell at me. Okay, so Amy might, yes. It depends, right? And this is different from my class, okay? In my class, I would never, ever yell at a student. On the other hand, they wouldn't say some of the things that you guys do, and that's fine. You're adults for the most part. And so sometimes if you say things that you should know better, then I'm going to scold you. I wouldn't say yelling. But Amy's going to yell at you, yeah, for sure. Thank you, Enrico. I really appreciate your contributions, and good seeing you again. Eurico, very hard to pronounce his name. Twiv 882, Ellis Spot is on Vincent's page. Let's see, 882. Oh, yeah, there it is. Sorry. You got me scared, man. I always worry that someone's fooling around. Somebody's uploading all of the old Twivs as videos, right? I have them as Creative Commons so they can do it. Doctors in Uganda stated on BBC TV that symptomatic cases and deaths in sub-Saharan Africa have dropped dramatically due to Omicron. Well, they're speculating, right? I guess there's not sub-Saharan Africa. There's probably not a lot of vaccination, right? So that's the assumption. But, it's not a mild infection. I hope they're not saying that it's spreading asymptomatically. It's possible that it is spreading very effectively and immunizing a lot of people as a consequence. But there's still going to be deaths, right? All of the deaths we've had in the past few months are due to Omicron. It's not mild. So maybe they're right, but I don't think. So this is a problem when doctors in some place report on the news that this is what's happening. Everyone assumes it's correct, but it's very hard to do the proper study to confirm these things. This is not a stupid question at all. I have a part of my course that says, are viruses beneficial? And the answer is we don't know. There are certainly examples in animals, in experimental animals, of beneficial viruses. And we have lots of viruses in us that reproduce on a regular basis, which don't appear to harm us. And so perhaps they're helping. How do you do the experiment? Well, you can't. You can't experiment on people, right? So not clear what to do. But I think there must be. Yeah, it's not a stupid question at all. I don't think there are stupid questions. There are questions for which you should know better. You should know the answer, but they're not stupid. I think you should never be ashamed to ask a question. And if you are here, I apologize, and I hope to foster an atmosphere that makes you comfortable asking questions. I know I can be a little prickly at times, and I shouldn't be. Do you know how it's possible to do viable vision sounds on therapeutic viruses that are replication dependent? Would you cell culture? Oh, I don't know what you mean, Shane. Don't know what you mean. Can you rephrase? I don't get it. I tested positive for 21 days, no symptoms, 3 vaccines, otherwise healthy. I had PCR positive for a long duration, never through rapid. Am I contagious? Not after 21 days. No, you're not contagious. You shouldn't worry. So you did, Enrico, thank you again for your contribution. And you and Priscilla are in the same country, if I remember correctly. Old-fashioned virus isolation. I would expect nothing less of you, Enrico. I'll take a look at the paper. You know, it's going to be up to Amy whether we do it on Twiv, because when I pick something she doesn't like, I get hell. I get hell. Well, phage therapy, yeah. Do you think that's a beneficial virus? I'm thinking of a virus that's reproducing in us. But yeah, phage would be a beneficial virus. But it's going to be a while before we have widespread phage therapy for human infections. Yeah. What do you think is more likely? A SARS-CoV-2 variant rises different enough to make vaccines ineffective against severe disease, or a brand new spillover occurs from a different kind of virus? More likely, a brand new spillover event. I don't think any variant will make them ineffective. They may reduce their effectiveness. But look, Omicron is really different. And sera from twice vaccinated people don't neutralize it. And those people still have good protection against severe disease. So whatever variant you're thinking of would have to evade T-cell immunity. And I don't think that's happening. We haven't seen that yet. And in an acute infection, it's just not going to happen. Has anyone checked to see if COVID vaccines cause any cross-reactivity to earlier coronas that merely cause cold? Yes, they do induce some antibodies that cross-react. But, yeah, so you would like to know what's the effect of that going to be on circulation of common cold coronas. I think it's going to be minimal because the common cold coronas undergo antigenic drift, and I think that's the way that they continually reinfect people. So I don't think the COVID vaccines are going to be any benefit. Do I know anything about the mRNA vaccine for HIV? Well, it's being tested, right? Because everything else for HIV has failed so far. All kinds of protein-based vaccines, vectored vaccines of all kinds, adenoviruses, pox viruses, all failed. So it's being tested. We'll see. There are plenty of countries where there's lots of AIDS, so we'll see how it goes. Field ecologists have more exposure to microbes. Yeah, for sure. They're out there rolling around in the dirt, right? I tested positive for 21 days, no symptoms. I know of PCR. How contagious am I? You're not contagious. Long COVID, you don't have any symptoms, so you don't have long COVID. What's the effectiveness of this year's flu vaccine? I think it's okay. I don't think it's a mismatch this year. The flu numbers are down still, even though we're emerging from lockdown and so forth. But I think under these situations, it's a good match. It's a reasonable match. That's my understanding. I don't understand the 1 per 100,000 saying it's a pandemic. There are going to be spikes above that akin to flu for many years. Yeah, well, that's the point. There's going to be spikes always. If you tested more extensively for flu, you would see huge spikes as well. But we're talking about getting out of a pandemic where much of the world is infected at the same time, as opposed to an epidemic where maybe there's an outbreak in the U.S., in some other country, not synchronous. So, yeah, you'll have local spikes, but it's about coming out of the pandemic. That's the difference. This is good. Cream cheese variants are inevitable, but do they have increased fitness? I don't know if you guys saw the pictures I showed. There's a bagel store down underneath the incubator now, and it's a bagel store that it's a chain. They have a store in Park Slope in Brooklyn, and I went last weekend, picked up some bagels. They were quite good, and but they have this incredible deli case full of cream cheeses of all different sorts, and I showed them on Twitter. I'd never seen such an array. Let me show you this picture here. Holy cow. Oh, and I have another picture to show you too. Let me show you 2 pictures while we're at it. Let me show you 3 pictures while we're at it. You don't mind. You're a good bunch for the most part. There's some people complain when I show pictures, but let's see. That's one. Oh, that's Amy. Maybe you want to see that one too. That's Amy also. I'm sorry for the... Here we go. This is the bagel thing. And this is the other one. Okay. So here, first of all, I just want to show you this young lady is Ann Werner. She works at the Vaccine Research Center at the NIH. And she's been working there for 2 summers. And she said she's been working a lot on the mRNA vaccines. She came to interview for the PhD program. Anyway, so that's the wall of polio. She got her picture taken in front of it. Okay, that's one thing. The other picture I wanted to show you. Here's the cream cheese. I mean, holy cow, look at this stuff. This is the plane up here. We got mixed berry. We have walnut raisin, cucumber dill. Well, you can read. I'm not sure I would take any of these. Anyway, that's crazy. And then one more picture of this. I took this of Amy the other day down in the subway. I thought it was nice because the subway has this lovely mosaic. And I just think it's nice. And plus, you can see she's smiling behind the mask, you know? Okay. So that's what I wanted to show you guys. So and anyway, that last comment, cream cheese variants are inevitable. Do they have increased fitness? I think they're not fit. I think plain cream cheese is the fittest. It outcompetes all of them. Have you discussed, one way to eat a bagel hot out of the oven? Yeah. So Amy bought 2 last Sunday, and they were delicious hot out of the oven with nothing on them. Why do the numbers look so good in Africa? Well, for a period of time, I think the testing wasn't very good. And I just think that they haven't had enough exposures. They will, because the vaccination rates are pretty low. No, we haven't discussed it. I don't have much data. People do tend to have more reactions to the second vaccine, but the question that was asked earlier was more complicated than that. Yeah, all these cream cheeses are fine for people, but Amy doesn't like them. I wouldn't eat any of them. I just like, if I'm going to have any, plain cream cheese. Just finished your Virology 2021. Do you think SARS do not use the GI tract as a portal of entry? No, it's a respiratory virus. There's no evidence that it enters the GI tract. You can find it in there, but that's because you swallow mucus all the time as a part of your defense system. And viruses, get stuck in the mucus, and you swallow it, and you pass it through. You digest it and pass it through. There's no infection in the GI tract. I don't see any good data that says that. When I see it, I'll let you know. But no, I haven't seen any, a particle here and there in a cell in an EM of a gastrointestinal tract. No, that's not virus replication. I know what virus replication is. John says Korean barbecue or teriyaki glaze. Wow, it sounds good. I try to stay away from meat, but I am not religiously. If there's something interesting to taste, I won't avoid it because of that. And here we go. Eurico says Amy's got great attitude. Yeah. Yeah. So the question about this fox is, we have a fox now running around our property, and I see it every day. I would never walk up to it, right? But it's outside the window. When I go out, it runs away. So I don't know that. But if it's rabid, it's going to act weird. It's going to come up to people, and that's the whole key. If you see an animal behaving weirdly, assume it's rabid. I guess the 6th edition of Principles of Virology won't get a new chapter on SARS. I don't think we've learned any principles. I mean, we learned a lot of principles from HIV/AIDS, but this was a shit show, honestly, with everybody rushing into the field, most of them not knowing how to do virology or immunology. And, I've said this before, they think they want to help, but really what they want is to get grant money. It's the whole funding situation is abhorrent, frankly. And maybe the most important thing we learned is that science communication is important. I've always thought, well, for the last 15 years, I've thought it was important. But, as the pandemic wanes in many people's eyes, fewer people are watching our videos, fewer people are subscribing. We still get a good crowd here. It kind of makes me sad, not because I need to have a lot of people, but I want to teach people, and I think they should continue to learn after the pandemic passes. But, yeah, science communication is important. There's not enough of it. What we do is just a drop in the bucket. And maybe the biggest thing I've learned is that, so if you do good things, nobody cares. And if you do bad things, people care. And so the example is on YouTube, right? You do crap and people in the millions watch you, and you do good stuff and not so many. And once again, I'm not complaining. I'm just sad about it. It's too bad people aren't better. Why is it hard to find the reservoir host of Ebola? So the suspect is bats, but no one has isolated infectious virus from bats. They've only got, I think, antibodies from a couple of bats. The problem is it's hard. The virus is dangerous. And you have to crawl into a bat cave with a suit on, with a respirator, and take samples. And it's hot as hell, and very few people want to do it. There are a few who do it, but it's less and less. And so I don't think we're going to find it. That's why it's so hard to do. You need to sample a lot of bats, and it simply doesn't get done. The principle that aerosols are important has been reinforced. I think we already knew about that. I'm sorry, Michael. That there's so many the main portal of entry of viruses is known to be the respiratory tract. So this this is not a new principle that we learned. I mean, if you think that's the case, then people haven't been paying attention. Science took a hit. Science has been taking a hit for many years. This is nothing new. Distrust of science has been growing, and I'm doing what I'm doing to try and fix it, but I'm a small voice, and I appreciate all your support. You know, we've built this incubator with your contributions, and hopefully we'll make it bigger with your contributions. But, you know, every time, it's hard to get scientists to do this. It's hard enough just to get them on TWIV, for God's sakes, nonetheless doing their own podcast. And, you know, many scientists want to do a podcast, but often it's because they don't want to do science anymore, and that's not a good option. Thank you, Michael, for your contribution, and your question I answered before, so there you go. You recently started talking about ORF8 as if it was a gene. Well, it is a gene, right? It's a protein coding gene. It's a specific entity. It's called an open reading frame because we haven't given the protein a name because we're not sure what it does. It probably does more than one thing. For many viruses, they just give it a number. They don't have an ORF in front of it. So how many open reading frames do viruses have? Why are they treated like genes? Because they are. A protein coding entity is a gene. And viruses can have from 0 to 2,500 in the biggest viruses, or anywhere in between. So, you know, SARS-CoV-2 has about 30, and polio has 12, but they're genes. There is it's very clear. Pig diarrhea corona has a very bad marketing team. Yeah. When you say stay safe, what safety behaviors do you think are the most effective? It's really a catch-all. I think the most effective behavior is to get vaccinated. And if you're and as I always say, the best vaccines, let's say 3 doses, which is all you need, gives you 90% protection against severe disease and death. It's not 100%. So if you're worried about that 10%, other things you can do are stay away from big crowds and wear a mask. Those are the main things I think you can do. But I teach now maskless in a class of 40 students. There should be 110, but most of them don't come. And I feel that I've assessed my risk and I'm willing to go with that. And as I said, I'd ride the subway and the train without a mask. Best science learned in the pandemic, mRNA vaccines. I think that's a big one. We learned that they can work as vaccines, right? We didn't know that. There were some experimental data that they worked in animals, but not in people. So I would agree. I think that's a big one. Yep. This is funny. Thank you, Elise, for your contribution. I really appreciate it. Side note, I bought an antique thermometer, barometer, hygrometer with both F and C because of TWIV intros. Oh, that's cool. You know, I can't tell you how many people write and say, stop with the weather. It's ridiculous. Leave us alone. Previous TWIV sounds like mRNA vaccine elicits a more robust T-cell response. Should we expect more vaccines like for the flu? Yes, I do think so. I think that they can. So, yes, the IL-1 paper we did showed that we have a lot of reactogenicity to mRNA vaccines, which prevents us from giving more, which could give a better T-cell response. And so we have to figure out ways to get around that. And then, yes, we could use it for flu, because I think the vaccines are lacking in their ability to induce T-cells. Yeah, that's a good point. Yep. You would be surprised how many people have a just world paradigm, like the American majority of Americans. Yes, I do. It's the thing I don't like to think about it because it's kind of sad, right? Because there are some people who are nice. Many people are nice in the world, right? I always try and be nice as much as I can, and occasionally other people are, and then someone ruins it by just running in front of you, cutting you off, and so forth. So, yeah, I know that computer code is binary. This wasn't what I was thinking of. I was thinking about the when you're writing in the program, which is not binary, right? It's above binary in the level. That's what I was thinking of. A lot of countries are getting immunity through infection. Yes, it's not the best way because you can die, right? And get long COVID, right? Let's put that in there too. Enrico, Mother Nature is a bitch. Yeah, it is. It's really hard. Disney movies made us think nature is nice. You're absolutely right. You were bad. Although Bambi didn't make it seem nice. Well, that was a human who shot her, right? RNA DNA is a 2-bit computer. Okay? 2-bit computer. 2-bit. Okay. So a 1-bit would be zero, is either on or off, right? 0 or 1. Okay. Let's see here. Now we're talking about computers. So, Tempress was inhibited by the malarial tafenoquine and derivatives of it and stopped viral entry. Thoughts on the high tox as a possible problem? Yeah, I don't think that's a good, hydroxychloroquine didn't target Tempress. That's why it didn't work, but it also had toxicity as well. Yep. You got resistant to idiocy. I'm not sure I'm resistant. It still pisses me off. I expect people to do better. Due to COVID restrictions, influenza B Yamagata went extinct at the beginning of 2020. Why so fast? Why hasn't Victoria gone extinct? They share infectivity and pathogenesis, but they don't share everything, right? There's have to be something different. We don't know what it is. Why so fast? Hey, you don't find a host, you're done. It's a good illustration of how interdependent viruses and hosts are. Okay, here we go. Russ did some work for us. The computer analogy got me to Google. That's 4 nucleotides encoded to 4 binary values, 0, 0, 0, 1, 10, 11. Is there a ghost in that machine? Yeah, that's right. Yeah, after parasitic wasps infected my found crystal, your caterpillar, they emerged rather than a lovely butterfly. I learned about nature's true nature. Yeah, nature is not human-hearted, although the human-hearted part, I would say nature isn't kind, right? There are a few books about parallels between DNA and archetypal structure sequences. I'm sure there are. I'm in India and positive. I had 3 AstraZenecas, chills 2 days in bed. Which variant? But that's what you're going to get. You're going to have chills, you're going to be in bed, but you're not going to, that's not a severe disease and you're still alive. That's what the vaccines do. It's working. Last week I wasn't calm. I remember that. Something got me at the very beginning. And you guys have to understand, virology is my life. Okay? I'm saying that seriously. So when I see it maligned, it really gets me. When people like cardiologists talk about it as if they know what they're talking about, it really gets to me. So if I weren't so passionate about it, I wouldn't be effective as a communicator. Amy said, inactivated vaccines are good for the immune systems. I'm 60, high blood pressure, was on the third phase, blah, blah, and vaccinated vaccine trial, bad headaches, then my immune systems attacked my eye. All right. What I don't think that's a universal knowledge or feeling about inactivated vaccines because, as I said, older people have experience with them. And if you call me him or that, I'm going to just ban you forever here because I told you a million times, don't say him when you're talking about me. Just talk to me. I'm here. Now you want to get me racked up again. I'm just saying there's not enough data on long COVID. And as I said before, if you have it, don't take it personally when I criticize the shortcomings of the science. That's all I'm doing. Is there quorum sensing between virions within the same host cells or cells? There's some have been reported for bacteriophages. Yeah. But it's a phage infected cell that somehow can sense the presence of other viruses. It's not been demonstrated for eukaryotic viruses. Quite interesting, though. And it's not a lot of work done. We did one of the papers on TWIM some time ago. Yeah. Did you ever reach out to Nicholas Christakis? I don't remember who he is. Remind me. Thank you, Darth Vadent, for your contribution. What do you think of people who want natural immunity? I think they haven't thought it through. Maybe, as Amy might say, their internet's not working. All right, so you guys are talking about long COVID. If you don't die, you could have long COVID. You could be debilitated for a long time. I don't doubt that. What I'm saying is I don't know what the numbers are in a vaccinated person. So you could die. You could get long COVID. That's a reason to get vaccinated. I'm sick with a stomach virus, and over the last 4 days, speaking with a dozen people across the country, at least half said me too. Is there a tracker site to see what currently is going around? Well, there's Google Flu Trends, right, where they track people making complaints, flu-like illness complaints. I don't know if there's a GI tracker, but I'd be careful. Just be careful that, 6 out of 12 people, it's a very small sample. Thank you. I'm glad you like my haircut. Quasi-species, worth to highlight the email just because of the quasi-species, which we talked about today in class. I'm glad you like the haircut. It's just when it gets too long, it's unmanageable. This is a bit too short, but it'll grow back. Christina, you're absolutely wrong on this. There isn't as much evidence for lab leaks. I don't know where you get your information, but you're wrong. You're wrong. There's a ton of information for a market origin. You're wrong. Did I say you were wrong? Why do you keep pushing being wrong? The CDC website says there is an estimated 95% COVID seroprevalence. Does that number imply we are mostly out of the woods? Well, if that's correct, then we are in a point where we have sufficient immunity to prevent severe illness and death. But we're not, right? We still see illness and death in mainly unvaccinated people. So I'm not sure that this number is right. The seroprevalence is probably off. And herd immunity is a problem when you have a virus that does antigenic variation, right? Then you have a problem getting herd immunity. That's why we continue to get influenza infections. That's why we continue to get common cold coronavirus infections. Yeah. So I'm skeptical of that number. Do you think of the fear of the virus and the issue around vaccination and boost has done more than the virus itself? No, of course not. The virus has done much more than any of that. What do you think about this guy saying ivermectin works? He's wrong. And this is an example of a guy who has millions of subs and he says wrong things. People want to hear about ivermectin. It's a shame. It's a shame. Well, do you think travel is okay if you're double boosted? Yeah, I'm going to start traveling in May. I'm going all over the place. Yep, it's fine. Okay. We are at 10:20, 10 minutes left. I'm looking through here to see if we have any more questions. Do we know of any preconditions that have a higher % chance of developing long COVID? Yeah, there was a study not too long ago where they had a couple of other conditions, and one of them was EBV, Epstein-Barr virus positivity, if I remember. I forgot what the others were, but that was one initial report, and I think it needs to be refined as well. Could you engineer a virus to infect a disease-causing fungus as a way of curing the disease? Well, actually, they exist. There is a virus that infects the fungus that kills elm trees, and it reduces the virulence of the the fungus. So they exist naturally. It's called the hypovirus because it reduces virulence. Isn't that interesting? What was the study that convinced you to get the COVID booster? I think you've asked me this before. It's on a TWIV. It was a preprint out of Ontario where they looked at neutralization of Omicron versus two doses, the initial 3-4 weeks apart, and then the boost 6 months later. And the boost allowed neutralization of Omicron. And even though there was no data on disease, no data on T cells, that said, that's cool that it broadens the antibody so that it will now neutralize Omicron. And I thought that it meant that the 2-3-4 week spacing, the initial 3-4 week spacing between the first and second dose was wrong, and this fixes it. And so if it fixed it for antibodies, maybe it would fix it for T cells. Now, there are some data that say that without a booster, you're still very well protected against disease. Not all the data. Some of them say you do, some of them you don't. You have to realize that when studies get done, even proper studies, they're going to have different outcomes. So a couple of studies showed no decline in protection against severe disease caused by Omicron with just 2 doses of vaccine. Others show a decline, and the third dose doesn't give you a decline against severe disease. Okay. But the key is that was why I did the third dose back then. Yes, I always recognize my prickliness. I can't. I when I see science in a certain way, it makes me prickly. But yeah, I will always admit that I have a lot of issues with that. No question. I even get prickly in my class and it's not them that's making me prickly. I'm just talking about the science and I get prickly. Like, how can someone say this? Why won't we reach herd immunity? Well, because the virus changes. That's it. The antigenic variants can reinfect you, so your immunity doesn't prevent sufficient impeding of transmission. That's why. Thank you, Lisa, for your contribution, and you're welcome. It's my pleasure to do this. Okay, let's see. Don't bring up R0. You could bring it up. I won't be mad at you, but I'll just rant and rave because I think it's a rather BS number. You know what's funny? I happened to see some clips from Contagion the other day. Ian went to Ian Lipkin's lab meeting, and he showed some. And, there's that scene where Kate Winslet says the R0 has gone up, and I just like, bullshit. It's just bullshit. Germ-free mice, free of bacteria, have enormous Zika. They're not virus-free, but you know what's interesting, Jack, about those mice? Their intestines are morphologically aberrant, and there are no lymphocytes in the intestine. So you need the bacteria for proper development of the gut. But if you infect those mice, those germ-free mice with norovirus, murine norovirus, it partially restores the defects. How cool is that? That's one of the experiments that suggests beneficial viruses, yeah. Can viruses be distinguished by subtle differences in their lipid membrane? Well, the lipid membrane always comes from the cell, and so cell membranes are not homogeneous. They're areas that differ. So depending on where the virus has bud from the cell, and of course some viruses can bud from internal membranes as well. So you can tell the differences. You do analysis of the lipids, chemical analysis of the lipids to do that. There are ways to do it that I'm not terribly... Amy would be able to tell you about it. Idea for class or episodes for TWIV viruses and cancer. Yeah, I have a lecture on viruses and cancer. Yeah. Yep, for sure. What can you talk about how the virus interacts with the translation machinery? Well, that's like a whole course in its own. Viruses, in general, inhibit cell translation to favor the translation of their own messenger RNAs, and this is something that Amy is an expert in, but there are many mechanisms, and then there have to be ways that the virus can maintain their mRNAs to be translated. And so, I way beyond a simple comment. I'm sorry. My favorite bagel is bagel 2. Yeah, I agree. That's a great restriction enzyme. I know it's a restriction enzyme. I'm older than you are, for sure. I thought the difficulty with HIV was due to it being a retrovirus. Not just being a retrovirus, but retroviruses integrate their genome into cells, and that's why they persist. Yeah. Yep. After 24/7 focus on Ukraine, coming back to viruses feels like coming home. So this morning I was supposed to be on China TV. So I rushed to the incubator, and they said, "Oh, sorry, we had to cancel. We have to do a program on Ukraine." So not entirely violins. Is there an upper limit to the evolution of viruses? Can they evolve into something else, or will they always be viruses? So you must have listened to my lecture today at Columbia, where I said, how much can a virus become a whole different virus? And the answer is, there are like 4 to the 5,000 different combinations of nucleotides in a virus genome. 4 different bases in a 10,000 base genome, where you assume half of the bases can be mutated. So it's 4 to the 5,000. Yet there are constraints on virus evolution. There are capsid sizes. Genome can't go from DNA to RNA. The recognition sites for enzymes have to remain the same. So there are limits, but they're very high, for sure. Okay, let's wrap this up, folks. We still have a bunch of things here, but probably we can... we're talking about cream cheese now. That's cool. TP Steve, I resent your criticism. It's not true. You're just not listening. I bet you're not listening. We do talk about molecules. Yes, and Costello, you're here, and I remember you said we'd reach 100,000 subscribers on YouTube. You were right. You were here like at the beginning of these live streams. Thank you. People like you give me faith that we're going to continue to have people interested in what we have to teach. It's very cool. Oh, thank you, Dead End. You're my. How could I not read this? You're my favorite YouTube podcaster. You have opened Pandora's box for me, but following for 10 plus years. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Yeah, I think you're right. 400 of you are worth more than millions of imbeciles. Yeah, I just would love to reach more people to teach them. That's all. But it's fine. I have no problem. Thank you, Russ, for your contribution. I really appreciate it. Really appreciate it. All right, let's. I need a drink tonight. I'm going to have a little single malt. What do you think about that? Usually don't do it. Thank you, Lisa, for your contribution. Really appreciate it. Oh, yes. Pronouns are Vincent, Professor Racaniello. Those are the two things you can call me. And here, you really can do one or the other. This is a good one. Cannot persuade myself that a beneficent and omnipotent God would have designedly created the ichneumonidae with the express intention of their feeding within the living bodies. Yeah, the parasitoid wasps. Very cool. And Maria, stop being critical, okay? It's just not becoming of this place. I am critical of the science and nothing else. And you're not being critical. You're being critical of me. So it's not really nice, okay? Doreen, thank you so much for your contribution. Really appreciate it. All right. Any others to thank? All right, folks. Thank you for coming. I really appreciate it. And even those of you who don't like what I say and are critical, I appreciate your coming. Hopefully you learned something, because in the end, that's what this is about. It's not about any one person. It's about the science. So until next week, bring back your questions and comments. Next week, we'll be here as always. Meantime, be safe. You knew what I meant by being safe. I said that earlier. Be safe and see you next week. Good night, everybody. Bye-bye.